Hi folks, welcome to another episode of My Life with Robert Burns. Jim Thompson and Douglas Mackenzie here again to talk to another of our cronies from around the Burn world. How are you doing today, Jim?
Doing great, Douglas. Enjoying the first day of summer in Kilmarnock anyway.
There you go. You don't get a lot of that in Kilmarnock.
No, this is it. The first day, we had a wee bit of rain this morning when I got up at 6 o'clock to go to the gym. And by midday, it's glorious. It's the only day we've had any kind of sunshine. It's been a terrible summer.
I hear the Kilmarnock Festival of Burns went really well.
It did, aye, and I for my sorrows now, I'm famous on that Facebook thing. I've never been on in my life before because the reporter from the Herald who wanted a tour of the town, I took the young lady round, and she was a great student, I've got to say. She decided that she would put me on tape as well. I didn't even know that she'd actually taken any photographs or images of me because it's not a nice sight, I've got to say. But aye, it worked out right, and it finished on Sunday there on Saturday night with the Chieftains dinner, and that was a great night. About 60 folk there, absolutely fantastic night.
Good. Well, we'll move on and we'll talk to our guest for tonight. Folks, our guest tonight is the new president of the Robert Burns Association of North America. So, cronies everywhere, please meet Mark Ferguson.
Hello,
Mark,
everybody.
how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much, Douglas. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate being here.
And you're in Atlanta tonight?
I am indeed, and of course over here it's the middle of the day with the 5-hour time difference.
Very good. Well, we always start with the same question, Mark. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Certainly, I'd be delighted to do that. So I was born in Helensburgh, Scotland. My folks were living in Balloch at the time. My father was working for Westclocks. I was actually supposed to be born at home, but complications set in, so I was wheeked across to Helensburgh and born there. My family lived there for a while, and then we moved across to Cardross on the River Clyde. So I went to school in Cardross and then went to secondary school in Helensburgh. And then when I finished college at Strathclyde University, graduated as an engineer, I actually joined the company that took me down to St Albans in England, where I met my wife, and we were married in I'm going to get this wrong, 1988, that's correct. And then in 1992, we got the chance to move to Brussels, and lived there for 4 years before getting the chance to move to Vienna, Austria. And then we went to Ireland. We were in Dublin, Ireland for 9 years, and then came here to Atlanta in 2009, and been here ever since, localizing with the company and then becoming a naturalized US citizen in 2019. So that's the potted history of me.
Very good. And are you still employed, or are you reaching retirement age?
I'm happy to tell you, Douglas, that I had the golden opportunity to take early retirement. So I've actually, next year will be 10 years. And I don't call it retirement because I'm busier than I'm busier now than I was when I was working. But so I call it active freedom. That's what it's called.
And your time at school, when you were at school in Cardross and in Helensburgh, what kind of subjects were your favourites? Did they lead you towards engineering?
Well, to be honest, my main focus was art. I liked drawing, and I had originally thought I might become an architect, but at the time it was a 7-year program to do it. So I thought I might become a film animator, and that was even worse. I think there was a 50% unemployment in the film industry at the time, and I think there were only 2 professional film animators back at that early stage. Of course, now there's animators everywhere. So the kind of idea was that, you know, my love of art and drawing, etc., thinking about that led me to think about engineering, and that's why I decided to do that. So it was more linked to my interests in things and drawing things that caused me to become an engineer. Although I'm a very practical individual. I bought my first car, which was a total wreck, and it was more in the garage than it was with me under it fixing it than it was on the road. So that was my passion for engineering came from.
So what kind of engineering did you do?
I did production engineering, so based upon, you know, operations management, production planning, capital project management, etc.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I did with my first job, working in engineering.
And did they give you any time for any kind of hobbies or interests?
It wasn't too bad. I got the chance to have time off in the weekends. It was a reasonably confident 9 to 5 kind of in existence until I got into project management. But it allowed me to. I was passionate to playing badminton. Was one of my favorite sports. In fact, that's where I met my wife. The company had a badminton club, so I joined the club when I got there, and she actually wasn't working for the company, but the club was kind of floundering, so they'd put an advert in the local paper, and so she had signed up via that advert. So I met her 2 weeks after I arrived. It took me 2 years before I had the courage to ask her out for a drink.
And did you move with the same company, or did you change companies with the moves from one country to another?
No, I started working with the company in the UK, and then I transferred to the parent company and stayed with them. So my service was continuous. So when I retired, I'd done 31 years, 6 months, and 7 days.
Excellent. And badminton, is it a sport that's played very often in the States?
It's an interesting question. I don't know that I've stopped playing some time back, so I've not looked at a possibility of playing. The only time I now play is when I go back to the UK, and my sister and I, my wife and her partner, we play in the garden over a net. But no, I haven't. That's an interesting question. I'll have to look into that and see if there's any badminton played over here.
I don't remember any USA badminton teams at the Olympics or anything like that.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah. So you travelled a lot with work. What about other travel? Do you get many places on holiday?
Well, that's the thing. When my job entailed traveling globally across the world. In fact, there was 2 places I wanted to go. That was Tokyo and the Amazon. I wanted to go on the river, and I managed to do both of them. So whenever my wife would want to go places, I would be thinking, no, I'd want to just stay at home because I'm fed up getting on planes and traveling places. So we did find places that we enjoyed going on summer vacations. Sardinia was a great favorite of ours. Portugal, we found a nice place there. And more recently, we've been holidaying in the Dominican Republic, which is a beautiful place.
Yeah, we've even got some folk from New Cumnock that go to the Dominican Republic for their holidays. So,
well, I can
seem to be becoming very popular.
Yeah, I can recommend it. It's a good place to go.
Excellent. Getting back to school days, this gives us a wee link into Burns. We always ask the question: Did you come across Burns at all at school?
Oh yes, indeed. In fact, one of my first memories is our head teacher was very into Burns, and one day when I was in primary 7, in came this reel-to-reel tape recorder, and I'd never seen one before. And on it was a recording of him doing Tam O'Shanter. So we got to listen to it. And of course, I was 10 or 11 years old. It was kind of interesting to listen to him saying it, but of course, a lot of it went over my head. But as a result of that, I asked my parents were also into singing. They were both musicians. So they had sung a lot of Burns, and there was Robert Burns's book of poems was in the house. And you know, my grandmother and other members of the family would oft quote Burns. So yes, school that's my memory of Burns and Tam O'Shanter. And that, of course, I think for many people, Tam O'Shanter is a poem that they enjoy and they love. For me, it really is one that I do, but I haven't ever learnt it off the tap of my head.
Well, that's given us a wee introduction to Burns, and I've probably stolen Jim's first question, but I'll pass over to him to continue the discussion.
I would have thought, I've got to say, Mark, that an engineer could remember 224 lines of just straightforward poetry. Come on.
Well, you know, I mean, I've got other poems I've managed to remember. But my difficulty is that when I read something and try to learn it, I find that quite difficult. I'm better off when somebody's speaking it to me. So that's probably the way I learned at school to cram for exams was I used to record all the notes on a cassette tape recorder and then listen to them over and over again so I could remember them. And it all went wrong in a history exam because there was one war called the 7 Years' War, and there was another war that lasted for 7 years. So I got the question and I started reciting or writing down all the stuff for the wrong war. Fortunately, it was a preliminary exam, and the history teacher said, "You get no marks for that unless you can give me a good reason why you've written about all the wrong thing." So I said, "Well, it just happens to be at the top of the page on the notes." And that's how I remembered it. He said, "Well, it's all accurate." He said, "But it's totally irrelevant to the subject, so you're getting no marks." So
good for the teacher. Right, but there's a few things I need to get to you tonight. But the first thing I would say is you're obviously heavily involved with Rabana, but you're also Atlanta have a Burns Club, and
yes.
you're obviously a member, and it would be great if you could tell the folks out there all about just Atlanta itself and how it started and how it's progressed and what it is now.
Yeah, certainly. So when I first arrived in Atlanta in 2009, I found out about the Burns Club of Atlanta, and I went online to see if I could join. But there was no possibility at that time. There's a limit of 100 members for the club, and all the positions were filled. And it's very much dead man's shoes. So once you're in, you don't tend to leave. So I hadn't any luck with that. And then in 2013, my wife happened to be out walking the dog, and she bumped into another lady walking her dog, and they started talking. And my wife said, "Well, my husband's from Scotland." And she said, "Oh, my husband's involved in a Scottish club." And she said, "Oh, what's that?" Turns out to be the Burns Club of Atlanta. So I managed to get an invitation to go as a guest. However, my job involved a lot of travel, so I was rarely here. So it wasn't until 2014 I managed to go 2 or 3 times to the club. And then I was able to put in for membership. By that time, several of the members had passed away, so there were some spots available. So I got the chance to join. So that was 2015. Now, the procedure at the club is that you meet the membership committee to start with, and then you meet the board if the membership committee believe that you are somebody that they would like to have as a potential member of the club. Once the board meet with you, you then you're there for 3 meetings, and only on your 3rd meeting are you confirmed as a member, and are you allowed to speak. So that's the process. Now, the club itself was founded in 1896, and originally they used to meet in various hotels around Atlanta. And then in 1910, they had the brilliant idea of building a replica of Burns's cottage in Alloa. So they managed to get a copy of the plans for the cottage there, and they've built it. And it actually mirrors the curve in the road in Alloa. So the building is curved. The original roof was thatched, but after 2 or 3 years, they changed that because here in Atlanta, all the critters enjoy staying in the roof. So it became an impractical thing to have. So it got changed to a slate roof. It's standard with the butt is used as a room where the board meet. The ben is basically the library, but it's also, there's a large table in which they lay out all the food that members bring in for the meetings, which are held on the first Wednesday of every month. And then the buyer is the main room where the tables are and where the programs take place. Just as I joined in 2015, they were beginning the process of building an extension, because at the back they had a kind of a lean-to area where you would meet just before the club started, but it was kind of falling down and it was always leaking and there was different problems with it. So they actually had got planning permission. It took 7 years to get planning permission to enable us to build the extension. So there's now a section at the back called the addition, and that's where the members meet for before the club gets together. So it's a nice area for gathering and gives us a bit more space when we do the Burns suppers to seat people, because they are extremely popular for folks who want to be there. So back in 2016, I think, I was asked to join the board as a director, and I took over the organisation of the Fall Ceilidh, which is normally takes place at the end of September, beginning of October, and it's the biggest fundraiser for the club. So we have a silent auction there, and we raise a fair amount for the club at that. So that was 2019 was the first one I organised. Of course, 2020 never happened. 2021 never happened. So I next got to organise it in 22 and in 23, and I'll be doing it again in 24. So this, and then last year I was asked to move over, and I'm now a director on the board, and I'm responsible as the librarian of the club. And quite fascinating with the fact that now that I have access to the cupboards and the bookcases, we actually had, I didn't know this, we have an Edinburgh edition, which was very exciting to be able to look at, and it's stored in a sealed box. But I got the chance to have a look at it only a couple of months back.
Oh, great stuff. And you obviously became involved through that with Urbana, and which, I mean, we've had several members of Urbana speaking to us. What's your position within the organisation?
So you're right, Jim. I joined Urbana as a director on the board in 2019. And then I got involved with organising the Urbana conference, which would have been the 40th anniversary conference in 2020. That, for reasons known to everybody on this, watching this will know, that got canned. So I remained on the board as director, and then I was invited to be sponsored as the vice president. So I'm trying to remember the dates. I'm currently the president, which I got in this year. So in 2022, I was vice president for the 2-year term. And then I was elected president at the AGM that we've just had in Philadelphia, 2024. So that's my current role.
Good. Now, you also said at the start there that obviously you hadn't learned to recite Tam O'Shanter, but there must be other things that you've learned over the years in terms of poetry.
Oh, yes. I mean, interestingly enough, as president of Urbana, it's traditional to be invited to attend the Jolly Beggars banquet at the Medicine Hat Burns Club up in Canada. So I've already had the invitation, and it comes with the requirement that you do a man's a man. So I'm currently learning that. I'm doing quite well with it, but it's not 100%. I can probably give you one verse that I'm confident about, if you'd like me to recite it, but I'm not going to try and do the whole thing.
No, go ahead.
So the verse I like particularly, and one of the reasons I do like this poem, because I'm also a Mason, and I think this is recognised as one of Burns's most Masonic poems. I believe it was read out at the opening of the Scottish Parliament when it was created, the new Parliament was created. So it's the verse that starts with, I'm going to have to try and get my head around this. You see yon birkie called a lord, wha struts and stares and all that. Though hundreds worship at his word, he's but a coof for all that. For all that and all that, his ribbon star and all that. The man of independent mind, he looks and laughs at all that.
Ah, yeah, very good. Well done. But you also said before we started that you had a couple of favourites from your youth. Were they poems as well?
They were actually songs, Burns songs. So the two, I realised quickly when you're in a Scottish family and you're going to visit relatives, and out come the instruments, and everyone has to have a party piece. I quickly learned you had to have a party piece, and it was no good saying I don't have anything. You would be railroaded into doing something. And equally, my friends, we used to go to different pubs in Scotland, and there was generally, you might find somebody doing, performing Burns or performing Scottish songs, and they would be asking people to get up and do a turn. So I thought, okay, I'll learn a couple of songs. So my two favourites are Rattlin' Roaring Willie and The Deal Come Fiddlin', the Exciseman. So those are my two party pieces.
Oh,
Well, how about doing Rattling Roaring Willie just now, and we can maybe finish off with The Deal's War with the Exciseman.
Certainly, I'll give you Rattling Roaring Willie. Oh, Rattlin' Roaring Willie, oh, he held tae the fair, and for to sell his fiddle, and buy some other ware. But parting wi' his fiddle, the soot tear blint his ee, and Rattlin' Roaring Willie, you're welcome hame to me. Oh, Willie, come sell your fiddle, oh, sell your fiddle sae fine. Oh, Willie, come sell your fiddle, and buy a pint of wine. If I were to sell my fiddle, the world would think I was mad, for many a rantin' day my fiddle and I hae had. As I came by Crochallen, I canna leaky it ben, and Rattlin' Roaring Willie was sitting on mon bruden, sitting on yon burden, amang good company. And Rattlin' Roaring Willie, you're welcome hame to me.
Woohoo!
Very good, very good.
Absolutely
And
right.
and your A Man's a Man wasn't bad either. You commented on the being sung at the Scottish Parliament. We previously on these podcasts interviewed Sheena Wellington, who performed that on that day. So
Oh wow!
So she tells a really good story about it.
Sorry, I need to go back and look at that, and that would be fascinating.
Yeah, she's certainly a good singer as well, I've got to say. But obviously, you've taken something from your parents if they were into music, with the fact that you're comfortable singing and that. Are you involved in any kind of singing other than the Burns stuff?
Well, I was when I was living with my parents. So my father had a band with his brother, and they had another fellow that was a member of the band, and he was the drummer. And we used to go and entertain the old folks. There was an old folks' home, and we'd go along, mum and dad, my uncle, my aunt, my two cousins, and we'd all have different pieces we'd sing. And I was the bass player in the band. And when I left college and I moved south to work, I was thinking that the bass guitar would come with me and I would be able to continue that. But I learned that my father and his brother shared everything, and everything was a family thing. So the bass, in fact, wasn't mine, and it was given to my cousin, and he took over as the bass player in the band. A bit of a nuisance. So then I decided to buy a violin because no one in the family played the violin. So I thought I'll learn the violin and go back to Scotland and surprise them. So I bought the violin and I got a book and I tried to teach myself, but I was not a violin player. Very difficult thing to play. So that I canned that. So then I went on and got a tin whistle. And I thought, at least I can try and play that. But again, I wasn't particularly good at that either. So, I mean, I can play the piano. I can throw a few chords together and I can, if someone's singing, I can pick up what they're singing and I can generally accompany them. So I've had many occasions when I've had the chance and there's been a piano and maybe we're out after a meal or something and get folks to sing along. I know that you're going to talk about Burns suppers. I've got plenty of stories to tell about them that involve playing piano and singing. So,
Yeah. Fire away with the Burns suppers. Start with your favourite and move on.
yes, well, my very first official Burns supper was in Vienna. We'd just arrived there and moved into the house that we were renting, and the phone rang, and it was a fella saying he had the honour of organising the Vienna Burns supper, and he'd learned I'd just arrived through a mutual friend who's also from Scotland. Would I like to come? So I thought, well, that sounds interesting. I said, I'll need to check with my wife. Our son at the time was only 9 months old, so I knew we'd have to get someone to look after him. So he said, well, make sure you don't take too long. He said, there's only 12 tickets left and I've got 20 feelers out. I said, oh, fair enough. So I found my wife was in the kitchen, so I found her and I said, would you like to go to a Burns supper? And she says, oh, that's fine. She said, get 2 extra tickets, because we had a couple of friends that we wanted to bring. So I rang him straight back. I said, I'll take 2 tickets. I said, can I get 2 tickets for some friends? And he says, are they Scots? I said, no. I said, they're English. Oh, well, they can't come. They can't come. He goes, no, it's only for Scots, this. So I thought, okay, fair enough. I said, but their name happens to be Burns. And it was, their name was Burns. Then that didn't cut any ice. So along we went. So that was 1997, January 1997, went to the Burns Supper, and it was an amazing event. It was held in a Horrigan, 120 people. White and Mackay had provided all the drinks, so there was bottles of scotch and all sorts on the table. And of course you could get a bit Austrian beer, and had a great time. And at that time I went along in I just wore an evening suit, a dinner jacket. I didn't own a kilt. And then so we went every year, and then we were moving to Ireland, and the fellow that was organising it had moved back to Scotland. So the new organiser rang me and he said, would I like to do the toast to the lassies? So I was very honoured to be asked to do this. And so I thought, well, I can't possibly do that without being decked out in a kilt. So I called my dad and said, Dad, can I borrow your kilt? By the way, he was already going around Scotland, going to different pubs and singing Burns stuff and all the manners for American tourists. So he said, aye, no problem. So the kilt got delivered. I don't actually remember how we got the kilt. Oh, aye, I was back in Scotland for New Year, and I got the kilt from him, took it back to Vienna, and but I'd forgotten the shoes. So he ended up sending the ghillie brogues over in the post. So they arrived, and off I went, and we did this, and I managed to get somebody to video record the recitation of the toast to the lassies. But I went I was I was possibly a wee bit on the edge of what might be acceptable with the couple of jokes that I threw in there. Although everyone laughed. The whole place was in erupts of laughter for the first 2 jokes. The last joke, half the people laughed. All the men laughed. The women weren't so happy. But that time, I actually got a table for 20 people, and I had every possible nationality I could find. I thought this whole notion that it could only be for Scots people was a nonsense. So I had, actually my mother and father-in-law were there as well. God bless their, God rest their souls. But that was so the whole Vienna Burns supper period was just fantastic. Wonderful nights. I really thoroughly enjoyed them.
And are any of these jokes that could be told on video?
I'm trying. So the first one, I don't think so. Let me think about the second one. The third one for sure cannot be told. That's not allowed. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember. No, the one. Trying to remember the second one. No, I can't remember it. So it's probably
If
just
you,
as well.
if you remember it, let us know and we can do an X-rated version.
It'd have to be X-rated, yeah.
Well,
So what was the next fun supper after that? Did you run one in Ireland as well?
Well, I got to Ireland, and on my team was a fellow from Edinburgh. My finance man was a man from Edinburgh, and he'd been all over the world with the company and had been setting up St Andrew's societies and the like. So he was right into the notion of having a Burns supper. So I said, right, let's have one at the house. So we organised this. I said, you can do the address to the haggis. I'll do the immortal memory, and we'll get other people to do the different bits and pieces. So I had a table in the dining room that could seat 6 people comfortably and 8 at a squeeze. So we managed to do 8 people at this original supper. Well, we invited the neighbours in. They all loved it. So the next year we did another one, and we decided, I got some big 2x4 sheets, and I made a thing for the table and a couple of 2x4 bars that fitted on the table. So I could now get 12 people around the table. So word got out about this, and more people wanted to come. So I said, on the day we were doing it, my wife's cooking potatoes and neeps. Oh, we had to get the haggis. And the only haggis I would serve was McSween's from Edinburgh. But you couldn't import it into Ireland. So fortunately, in the village, there was a general store, and he could get anything. So I went down and asked him, and he said, no problem at all. I'll get you the haggis. So the haggis got shipped in to him, and then it came to us. Of course, it was shipped in frozen. But the day of this, I can't remember what year it was, I decided we could add 2 more bits to the end of the table. So we added 2 more bits. So at this point, the table's always bending at the edges because you put the plates of food down and stuff. But on that one, we interspersed each course with somebody doing a turn. And one of my friends played, wasn't the French horn, it was the straight version of the horn. So he played a piece. Another friend played guitar, and he did a Celtic song. I forget how it goes, but he did that. And then we had other people. But of course, the guy who was organising, who was doing the dress of the haggis, my finance man, he and his wife were Scottish dancers. So after the meal, we would clear the lounge and have dancing. But of course, by this time, everyone's well oiled with the drams that are going down. So the dancing would be fairly erratic and all over the place. And these events would generally end at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. in the morning. So now I've got my American neighbour, and I'm trying to take him up the drive at 5 a.m. in the morning. So it's like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, 1 step to the side, 1 step to the other side. Eventually, I get him to his gate at his house. Now, he had electric gates with a code on them. So I'm thinking, oh, we're blown here. I have no idea what the code is. And he was absolutely bluttered something, and he's not going to know either. So I lined him up with the pad, and I don't know, he must have been drained into him. He pushed in the code, and the gates opened, and I thought, thank heavens for that. And I pushed him. I said, right, good night, John. See you tomorrow. Now, his wife was supposed to come to that, but she got called away to a meeting in London. So she was devastated because she'd been to previous ones. And I don't think he would have drunk as much as he did if she had been there. I think she had put the kibosh on that. So that was it. So then we came to Atlanta, and I decided we're going to carry on with these Burns suppers. So came here in 2009. So we had a 2010. Oh no, 2009. My friends back in Ireland were all upset because we'd left. So they said, is there any way you could help us organize something? Well, with luck would have it, I managed to arrange a business trip, and I took 2 American colleagues back to Ireland, and we held a Burns supper in the neighbour's house. And I got my colleague from America. He'd nothing to do. He'd never been to the UK or Ireland. In fact, he'd never been out of the States. I got him to do the immortal memory, and he did all his research, and he found out that in 1759, that's the year that Arthur Guinness started brewing Guinness. Same year as Burns was born. So I didn't know that, and he came out with that fact. I thought, Carlos, good man. You've done your research well. So we did. So that was 2009, and then to 2010 we did the supper in Atlanta. But by this time I commissioned the building of a table. So I've got this big table. It's 8 by 4, and it's got 2 extensions. So I can now get 18 people comfortably around the table. So that was great. It's a little bit of a squash. But we did it in 2010, 2011. We've done it here in 2012. And then my wife got a bit kind of fed up with it all. Because the 2012 one, people started saying they didn't like the haggis and could they have something different? So she'd arranged chicken for some people. Some people that didn't order chicken saw chicken coming out and said they wanted chicken, but there wasn't enough chicken. So my wife's in the kitchen cutting up bits of chicken. She said, I'm not grown women fighting over a bit of chicken. She said, I've had enough. So I haven't done one at the house since 2012. Was the last one.
So that's the reason you had to join the Atlanta Burns Club? Well,
yes, exactly. Their Burns suppers are probably the finest I've been to, because they've always got a guest in to do the immortal memory. So, you know, some of the people you've interviewed have been doing that. And after the one at they do all the folks perform, I call it off the top of your head, but it's called something special. I can't remember. They have a word for it. But afterwards, they clear the space and everyone comes out. And we've got a couple of members that do things. I generally just sing. I'll do Rattlin' and Roaring and The Deal Come Fiddling. But those, I have to say, the Burns suppers, and to my great honour, I got to do the immortal memory at the Burns supper in 2022. We had actually arranged for someone to come from Scotland, but there was a problem. Oh, we changed the date of the event because of another COVID outbreak. So it got moved to February, and I was asked to do it. So that was one of my finest honours, was delivering that, because the people there are their interest in Burns is so great, and their understanding of Burns is so great that you want to deliver to them, you know, this the perfect immortal memory, and I believe I was able to do that. So
very good, very good. Before we started recording, you talked about the inauguration of the Atlanta Burns Club in 1896. I think you said. Couldn't you tell the audience about that?
Yeah, so in 1890, the club was formed in 1896, but the clubhouse or the cottage was built in 1910. In fact, the clubhouse started building it in this, I think it was the August of 1910, and it was ready for the 1911 Burns supper. So that was the first supper held there. But they got the Grand Master of Masons in Georgia to dedicate the cottage. So the cornerstone is dedicated, and that was done in 1910. And then at the 100-year anniversary, there was a rededication of the original stone by the then Grand Master of Masons in Georgia. And that there's a couple of other Masonic markers on the cottage that recently I've been helping to clean up, and so people can read them better, because they were getting a bit tarnished. So yes, that was quite significant.
And we talked earlier on about the fact that you're now president of Rabana. Apart from the fact that you've got a conference to organise next year, what else is Urbana going to be doing?
Yes, so one of the things which we have been working on is the bylaws. There was a lot of information or a lot of stuff in the bylaws that sort of wasn't helpful to the board in terms of our ability to do the day-to-day running of the organization. So last year we were able to change that and created a number of policies and procedures which allows the board to operate more successfully. And to be honest with you, back before 2020, the Urbana only met, the board only met the day before the conference and AGM. But with COVID, we'd started meeting on Zoom, as I think every organization on the planet started meeting on Zoom every month. So the board started to meet every month. And then the action that we started to get out of that and the additional things that we could do meant that we needed a bit more flexibility. So the rewriting of the bylaws and the creation of policies and procedures was done at the AGM we just had. So now we're in the position of being able to make some of that happen. And one of the things which has been changing is the role of the region directors. So on the board, we have 3 directors representing Canada and 3 representing the US. And back in 2019, there wasn't much of a defined role for the director. So most recently, I've created a new policy for the directors to give them more guidance about what we're expecting for them to do. And it's about looking out for new membership, making sure they're connected with the members we currently have, the clubs and individual members, and organising things locally in their regions. So that's where we're evolving it to. So there should be more action and more possibility to get more members in. The other thing which we did was to recognise that Urbana was predominantly clubs are members, but if you're a member of a club, you're also a member of Urbana. But most club members don't know that. And I had the chance to address the Burns Club of Atlanta in April, made a presentation about Urbana, and I said to them, if you're a member of the Burns Club of Atlanta, please put up your hand. And people put their hands up. I said, keep your hand up if you're a member of Urbana. And of course, everybody put their hands down. I said, no, you're all members of Urbana, because the Robert Burns Club of Atlanta is a member of Urbana. So it's an associate member. And what I'm trying to do is find out, we know how many clubs are members, we know how many individual members are members, but what I'd like to know is how many associate members we have. So I think if we add them all together, we could be up in the, close to 1,000 members of Urbana, which I think is a more exciting thing to be able to tell people. An organisation of 1,000 people, something you want to be involved in. So that's where I'm currently focused.
Good. And is membership quite healthy?
It is. We've managed to recently, through the efforts of the treasurer and the secretary, reach out personally to all the clubs and all the members. And we had a number that had kind of stopped paying their dues because of the COVID thing and the aftermath. Most everyone has re-engaged. And I think we've only got, last count, we had 6 who had contacted and said they'd pay but hadn't paid. And we've had recently 2 or 3 new clubs have joined us. So we're trying to get back out there and make sure people know that we're around and that they can have this opportunity to be more involved in the Burns community.
Very good. And you mentioned that you're going to be hosting the conference next year. What are the plans so far? Have you any ideas? What form it's going to take?
Yes, so the conference will be held on the Friday the 9th and Saturday the 10th of May. Most people come in, or a number of people come in on the Thursday. So there's usually an event in the evening on Thursday, a casual event. And then the conference has a kind of a formula that we follow. So on the Friday, there'll be the golf competition. So we've already chosen the golf club that we're going to use. And then there'll be tours of places of interest in Atlanta. A couple of things I've got in mind is the World of Coca-Cola. There's the Georgia Aquarium. And then there's the Atlanta History Center. And there may be others. We've got to think about. There's also a distillery that we might think about having a visit to. And then on the Saturday morning, we will hold the Friday night will be the traditionally it's a ceilidh. Because it's going to be held in Atlanta, we're going to call it a barbecue. So it's a more traditional thing to do. So that's going to be held at the cottage, which will give us some logistical challenges for getting people from the hotel to the cottage. So I'm working out how we can hire a couple of coaches to get people down. And then on the Saturday, it's likely we'll hold the AGM at the hotel because of logistics. Getting everybody down to the cottage would probably be not worth doing it. And then we'll have there's usually 2 guest lectures. We've already got Patrick Scott, who's a member of the club. He's going to do one of the speeches, and I'm waiting to see who we can get to do the second speech. Then, of course, we'll have the Jim Connor Burns quiz. And then the evening, we're going to be back at the cottage to have the formal Burns dinner, where we'll present the prizes for the people that have won the golf competition, the Jack Hume poetry competition, the Jim Connor quiz, and like I mentioned, the golf competition. And then Sunday, well, we may arrange if people want to go to service at the church, and then people are free to go home.
Very good. Sounds like an exciting 2-3 days.
It should be, and a lot of people I know will. I think there'll be more people coming because people are interested in coming to the cottage. That's a big lure for folks. As of course, it's unique, being the only replica in the world.
Yeah. Anything else we want to ask Mark about Burns, Jim, before we start to wind up?
No, I think we've covered everything, to be honest. The main points have been through.
Anything we missed, Mark?
I don't think so. I think most of the things I was thinking about talking to you about, we've managed to cover.
Good. I wanted to go back to something you mentioned, I think, before we started recording, that at one stage in your life you used to enjoy a wee malt whiskey. And I wondered if what your preference was in these days.
Well, my favourite of all the Scotch malts is Ardbeg, and it has to be the 10-year-old Ardbeg. I mean, I like the other variants, although I wasn't that keen on Ardbeg very young, because I think it was only 6 years. It was pretty rough, but Ardbeg was my favourite. I was always a fan of the Islay malts, liking the phenolic taste. Now, interestingly, since I stopped drinking in 2019, I've managed to find a non-alcoholic whiskey substitute called Mundy, and it is actually pretty good. It's got a bit of bite to it, and when people taste it, I tell them, be very careful when you put it at the back of your throat, because it can catch and cause you to cough like you would if you weren't careful when you were drinking a single malt. So yes,
they always say the Islay malts are a bit of an acquired taste.
Yes, absolutely. But funny, you remind me, I was in a hotel and I went up. This is while I was still drinking. I went up to the bar and they had 2 Islay malts. They had an Ardbeg, but they also had a Lagavulin. Yeah. So I'm looking at them, and the price was different. So the Lagavulin was, I think, $14 for a nip, and the Ardbeg was $13 for a nip. So I said to the fellow, I said, so that doesn't make any sense. He says, what do you mean? I says, well, the fact the Ardbeg is cheaper than the Lagavulin. He says, why? I said, because the Ardbeg distillery is further up the road than Lagavulin, so it's had to come further to get here.
And what I like about Lagavulin is when you do the tour, they give you a wee sample of the roasted barley and get you to remember that taste. And when you have a wee dram at the end, the taste comes through quite strongly. It's a nice method of doing things.
Absolutely. Well,
Anyway, that was really just my way of leading into getting you to do the Deals of War, which you promised us earlier on.
yes, absolutely. I can do that. I was thinking about the Ardbeg distillery, which I had the chance to visit, and the distillery manager took us round and into the warehouse, and out of a cask he brought this, he filled this demijohn and he passed it all around to us, and we tasted it. It was incredible. And then he had us taste it again and slunge it around our mouths, and it was just amazing. And it was a 47-year-old cask Ardbeg. And then the writer, Ian Banks, wrote the book, what was it called? In Search of the Perfect Dram. Forget the name of the book, but the underline was Search of the Perfect Dram. First distillery he went to was Ardbeg. Had exactly the same experience as I had with the same guy. Asked if he could buy it, and they said, no, it's not available. She goes, I think I've found the perfect dram. But anyway, the deal come fiddling. The deal come fiddling through the tune, and he danced o'er the exciseman, and ilka wife cries old moon, I wish you luck of the prize, man. The deals of war, the deals of war, the deals of war, the exciseman. He's danced a war, he's danced a war. He's danced a war, the exciseman. We'll make our malt, we'll brew our drink, we'll laugh, sing and rejoice, man. And many brought thanks to the meikle black deal that danced a war, the exciseman. The deals of war, the deals of war, the deals of war, the exciseman. He's danced a war, he's danced a war. He's danced a war, the exciseman. There's 3 some reels, there's 4 some reels, there's hornpipes and strathspeys, man. But I the best dance that came to the land was the deals of war, the exciseman. The deals of war, the deals of war, the deals of war, the exciseman. He's danced a war, he's danced a war. He's danced a war, the exciseman.
Well done, Mark.
Well done.
Well, that was excellent. It just leaves me to say thank you very much for telling us about your life with Robert Burns. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, gents. It's been great fun. Thank you.